Next, in example 2b, we're going to find g of f and its domain. Okay, so we're going to write down g of f of x. So I am plugging f into g in this case. Okay, so I am going to write down g of x because that's what I'm plugging into. Okay, so g of x is 2 over x. Okay, now I'm going to plug in f of x. So everywhere I see an x, I need to replace it with f of x, which is 3 over x minus 1. Okay, so this is going to be, you have a 2 in the numerator, and in the bottom, you have 3 over x minus 1. Okay, so we are going to have to simplify this. This is a complex fraction, a fraction within a fraction. Okay, but remember, before we simplify, we have to write down any bad spots before we go on, because the simplification process will cover up the bad spots. Okay, so when you look at this, okay, so right here, look at this bottom fraction. Okay, so basically the numerator is 2, the denominator is this fraction. Okay, when I concentrate on this fraction, 3 over x minus 1, you clearly cannot plug in 1. Okay, because 3 over 1 minus 1, that would give you a 0 in the denominator. Okay, so we're going to write out to the side, x cannot be 1. Okay, cannot be 1. Okay, again, the simplification process will cover up that fact. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and simplify. This one, luckily, will not be as bad as part A. Okay, remember what you want to get to. You want to be able to get to a fraction divided by a fraction. Okay, so one fraction divided by one fraction. Okay, so that's almost what we have. Okay, so let's come over here to simplify it. Okay, I need to make the numerator a fraction. So just make it 2 over 1. Okay, the bottom is already one fraction. Okay, and so now you can go ahead and divide your fractions. Okay, so we're going to have 2 over 1, leave the first fraction alone, change division to multiplication, flip the bottom fraction. Okay, and now you can multiply across the top. 2 is going to be multiplied, be careful here, 2 is multiplied by the entire quantity x minus 1, so you need parentheses there. Okay, the bottom is going to be 3 times 1, which is 3. Okay, and you can leave it like this. Okay, this is an acceptable answer. If you wanted to, you can distribute the 2 up here to get 2x minus 2 over 3. Okay, so either of these either of these formats is correct. Okay, now that we have simplified, again, notice it looks like you can plug in 1. Okay, if you plug in 1, remember these are equivalent. If you plug in 1, you're going to end up getting 0. So it looks like you can actually plug in 1, but you can't. You know that from initial setup. Okay. After the simplification process, you need to check for any additional bad spots. Okay. My denominator is just 3. Okay. So I'm not going to, there's nothing I can plug in for x, nothing additionally that will get me in trouble. So the only bad spot is x cannot be 1. Okay. So your answer is going to be, the function here that you formed. Okay, either one of these is acceptable. The domain, you can plug in any number you want except for 1. Okay, remember that includes decimals or whatever. You can plug in any number you want except for 1. So I'm not going to require you at this point to put interval notation, but just keep in mind you do have to state that the x value cannot be 1. Okay. All right, so let's move on to part C. Okay, C is going to be another messy one. Okay. We're going to do f composed with f in this case. Okay, so again, I'll probably end up doing the work on a separate piece of paper. Okay, so this is going to be f of x. We are plugging f into f. Okay, so let's go ahead and form the function. So I'm going to write down f of x, 3 over x minus 1. And now I'm going to plug in. See, I wrote this down because this is the outside function. That's what I'm plugging into. So now I need to plug in the inside function. So everywhere I see an x, okay, so circle your x, okay, we are going to replace it with the inside function, which is also 3 over x minus 1. Okay, so if I write this out, this is going to be 3 over, okay, so you've got the 3 in the numerator, And then the new denominator becomes 3 over x minus 1 minus 1. Okay. And this is what you're going to have to simplify, unfortunately. Okay. Again, before we go on to simplify, we need to check for bad spots because the simplification process will cover it up. Okay. When you look at this, all you need to check for is you need to check the fraction. Okay. When I look at this fraction, okay, I cannot plug in 1. 1 minus 1 will give me 0 in this denominator. Okay. So I'm going to write out to the side, x cannot be 1. Okay. That has to be one of the bad spots. Okay. So I'm going to go on to a separate sheet of paper and try to simplify this for you. Okay. All right. So this is what we got. Let me go ahead and write it down. Okay. So we are starting with this complex fraction 3 over x minus 1 minus 1. Okay. Again, our goal is to make it one fraction in the top and one fraction in the bottom. Okay. It is not one fraction in the bottom already because you've got a fraction, one fraction minus a number. Okay. I just want to see a numerator and a denominator. That's it. Okay. So you're going to have to subtract these things. Okay. And make it one quantity kind of thing. One unit, I guess I should say. All right. So again, we're going to kind of ignore the 3 in the numerator for right now. We are going to work with this messy denominator. Okay, but I am going to carry the 3 in the numerator so I don't lose track of it. Okay, so let's leave the 3 in the top. Okay, again, in the bottom, we are going to make both of these guys fractions because, you know, we want to make it clear that we are subtracting fractions here. So this is going to be 3 over x minus 1 minus, make 1 a fraction by putting it over 1. Okay, so now in order to subtract these guys, okay, they need to have the same denominator. They do not. Okay, so what you do, all you have to do is multiply them together to get the common denominator. Okay, so the common denominator is going to be x minus 1 times 1, which is x minus 1. So I'll even write that out to the side. So the common denominator is x minus 1. Okay. All right. So, okay. So here's what we're going to do. Let's see. This guy already, okay. So going from here to here, okay. The bottom, we need it to be two fractions that we're subtracting where both have the denominator x minus 1. Okay. So if you go back to this previous step, this fraction is already has the correct denominator. So we're going to leave the numerator alone. Okay. This other fraction, the 1 over 1, does not have the correct denominator. We need it to be x minus 1. Okay. So we're going to multiply the denominator by x minus 1. Okay. To get that correct denominator. If you do it to the bottom, you have to do it to the top. Okay. So the bottom will be 1 times x minus 1 is x minus 1. The top will be 1 times x minus 1. So it'll look like this. Okay. So remember, your subtraction sign stays in the middle. X minus 1 divided by itself is 1. That's what you started with. Okay. So nothing really has been changed except what it looks like. Okay. All right. So now you're going to subtract these fractions. Okay, in order to subtract fractions, you have to have the same denominator. That's why we had to do what we did. Since they now have the same denominator, we can subtract them. Okay, we keep 3 in the top. Okay, the new denominator, we're combining them into one fraction. The new denominator will be x minus 1. Okay, and now you can subtract across the top. Be careful here because it is going to be 3 minus this whole entire package deal. So you're going to have to use parentheses here. You're subtracting all of x minus 1. So that negative is going to have to get distributed. Okay. All right. So let's keep simplifying. You've got 3 in the top. Okay. You've got x minus 1 in the denominator of the denominator. Okay. If you distribute the negative here, you're going to get 3 minus x minus times negative times negative will give you positive 1. Okay. All right. So we've got 3 over 4 minus x, because 3 plus 1 is 4, minus x over x minus 1. Okay. All right, so we have made the denominator one fraction. That's what we were after. Okay, so now we can keep going, okay, because this is still complex, a fraction within a fraction. Okay, we're trying to get to a situation where it's not complex anymore. Okay, so you're going to end up dividing two fractions. Okay, so now you need to make the top a fraction, so 3 over 1, divided by this crazy denominator. Okay, so now to divide fractions, you leave the top fraction alone, change division to multiplication, flip the bottom fraction, okay, and now you can multiply across the top and across the bottom. Okay, so this is going to be 3. Again, it gets multiplied by this entire quantity, x minus 1, okay, over 1 times 4 minus x is just 4 minus x, okay. So you can leave it like this, okay, or you can choose to distribute the 3, your call, okay, but it is no longer a complex fraction. You just have a fraction, okay. All right, so either one of these is acceptable for the composite function, okay. Again, we already know from initial setup that x cannot be 1, okay, because of right here, okay. So you need to check for bad spots at the initial setup and, sorry, I'm trying to get it to focus, and at the end once you've simplified, okay. So after simplification process, check for any remaining bad spots because this is a fraction, okay. So your other bad spot, I'll draw an arrow up here. So your other bad spot, other bad spot will come from setting the denominator equal to 0, okay. So we're going to see when does 4 minus x equal 0, okay. Move the x over. Your other bad spot is 4, okay. All right. One more thing to mention again. So you have, this is your answer. Okay, this is the composite function. Either one is acceptable. You have two bad spots, 4 and positive 1. Again, it looks like you can plug in 1 to here. Okay, you would end up with 0. Okay, but you really can't. It's a bad spot. Okay. So let's see here. You can go back here. All right. If we go back to this page, okay, I'll just go ahead and write down the answer and state the domain. Okay, so here we go. F of x is going to be, I'll just put the simplified, well, I'll put one of them. I won't put both. Remember, you can have either thing that I had in the box right here. Okay, I'll just put this one for simplicity. And x cannot be 1, x cannot be positive 4. Okay, so there's your answer. Okay. All right.